Hey, Andrew. Appreciate your time on the phone yesterday as well and choosing us at Racers360. Excited. We got some really good things that we can work on here. So I'm going to go through the lap, kind of highlight some of the areas. The primary thing that I think we want to focus on is the timing of our initial throttle and trying to work on bringing a little bit more entry speed into the corners. So I'm going to turn the volume down, walk through some of the stuff. I want to go through turn one here a little bit. So let's go ahead and play at full speed for right now. Set up really well. Nice apex here. At this point right here, I'd like to see you use a little bit more of the road out to the right side out here. I wouldn't say using all of it, but maybe about a car width or a half car width wider. And reason why I say that is I want the radius of leading up the hill to turn two to be opened up a little bit so you can set up and drive it flat out a little bit longer up into turn two to set up and be later to throttle so we can really bring the speed in. So moving a little bit farther forward here. Let's go ahead, get it to go play again. Come on, there we are. So you can see we're kind of crabbing a little bit in here. I'd like to be, again, that car width wider and then turning harder once we get up the hill so that we really are parallel with this outside curve when we get up there. So going frame by frame, what ends up happening is we're a little bit more parallel to the outside. We can then have our hands more straight in the brake zone, and that'll allow us to really challenge the brake zone further. And the reason why I'm saying that is if I turn the volume on here, I want to pause it where I hear the initial throttle. So you can see right here is where our initial throttle is, and it's just way too early. What's going to happen, and this is the main theme I want to focus on, and I'll go through a few different corners that we're having this issue with. When we get to throttle this early, we're taking the weight off the front nose, and we're having this dull understeer all the way out to the exit, and it's going to delay when we can get to full throttle. So ideally here, I'd really like to only be getting to initial throttle right around this apex curve, all the way over here. And you're going to throttle here because your brain's saying, hey, I've overslowed, I need to get to throttle. But the problem with that is the whole weight transfer and how it's going to affect the balance of the car and the limit of the grip. Ideally, what I would like to be able to change is say, hey, I've overslowed, and then have your brain say, no, wait, I can't get to throttle until this apex. So really build in that discipline. What's going to happen is you're going to take one step back because you're going to overslow and you're not going to have the throttle to save you. But that discipline is what's going to allow your brain to say, hey, I've overslowed, not allowed to get the throttle into this curve. Well, the only other option for me is to roll more entry speed. And that's really the answer that we want to get to, is be able to roll more entry speed. So that discipline is what's going to allow us to do that. So if we go a little bit farther forward here, I think your line is actually really, really good. Problem is, it's just how long it takes us to get to full throttle because of that initial throttle. So that's really the note for me here through 1 and 2 is use a little bit more road on entry for 1 to set up, to be able to open up that radius, have your hands straighter in the brake zone for 2, so you can brake deeper, brake lighter, roll more entry speed here, and delay that initial throttle. So going farther forward, whoops, let me turn the volume down a little bit again. I think it's also similar for turn 3. So once again, I'm going to turn the volume back up. I'm going to pause it where we get back to throttle to set up for 3. So similar issue here. You can see this is a bit of a unique corner. Just the chicane up the hill is blind. But what I also want to see here is delaying that initial throttle until about the apex point for this corner as well. That'll help the balance of the car. You're probably having this dull understeer through here. The front end gets really light. And again, it's because when we get to throttle, we're shifting the weight off the front, and we're gonna, wherever the weight goes, so the weight's going to the rear is where the grip is. So we're having this light understeer. There's quite a lot of wheel in the car. So I'd like to see you try and brake lighter, hold that trail brake slightly longer. That'll allow you to have the front grip to help kind of rotate the car where you want it and be able to commit to much more throttle at the appropriate point. So similar note here, kind of the same sort of concept. Let's turn the volume back down again. I would say your line through here, going slow but slowly, is actually really, really good. And then over the top of the hill, you do a great job with the throttle. You really delay it, nice lift, you wait, you wait, you wait, and your initial throttle only comes right here, which is exactly where we want it. use all the road on exit. So keep up the second part of three here. That's great. Turn 4, let's turn the volume back up and let's take a listen where that initial throttle comes. So comes right here. I think that's fantastic. Your brake point looks good. Good entry speed. Nice line right now. Let's see what the exit of it looks like. Getting the throttle. Using all of the road out here. Yeah, that's perfect. So great job through turn 4. Keep that up as well. Let's turn the volume back down again and watch it full speed through this next section. Kind of a nice little kink here. Awesome job. Alrighty, so let's see the carousel. Where are we here? I noticed early in the session, I took a lap that was earlier in the session to talk about some of the things that I was seeing. And you kind of adapted your driving towards the end of the session and it kind of fixed this issue, but I want to talk about it and highlight it. I think early in the session, you were too wide on entry here, and you're kind of setting up for a traditional late apex where you go wider and then really come back down. But this corner, if you can see, is actually a little bit cambered right here. So what you started to do towards the end of the session was you started to turn it a little bit earlier, hold it around the inside longer, let it be kind of more of a, somewhat more of a double apex. You're not really apexing the first part of it, but you come in closer, you let the speed take you wider out here in the mid corner to set up for the last part of it and really be able to get back to throttle. That's the ideal scenario because you're taking advantage of the camber of the road here. So I don't want you out wide where you are right now. I'd rather see you turn it a little bit earlier, keep to the inside, have enough speed to take you wider in the middle of the corner. So let's go kind of frame by frame here. So you can see out here, we're just way too wide out here. We're not taking advantage of any of the camber. I'd like to see probably about a half car width more to the inside, maybe a full car width to the inside. And what ends up happening is right here, you end up in a good spot. Like this is where I want to be, but we've had to overslow because we went out wide, where if we could turn it earlier, bring in enough speed, take advantage of that camber, and have enough speed to then, in the middle of the corner, take us out where we are right now, that's ideal. So that way we can match entry speed and still get the exit that we're getting when we kind of really set up for it. Hopefully that makes sense. Going full speed, nice job on the line here. Let's turn the volume up, take a listen to throttle. Beautiful. Great exit out of this corner. I would just say let's take advantage of the grip that's in the inside of the corner on entry. Treat it more like a double apex corner where we kind of keep it inside in the beginning, let it go a little bit wide because of the speed we brought in, and then we can rotate the car there in the middle of the corner and get the exit that we were getting. You started to do that towards the middle to end of this session. Just really want to talk about why that felt better and make sure that you knew that that was the better way to go about this corner. So let's go take a look at the hairpin here. And this, again, will be a corner about throttle position. So what I want to do is I want to turn the volume up. I want to watch it one time full speed, and then we'll go back and talk about what we see. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is we're going to talk about the initial throttle here as well. I think what I'd like to see you be able to do is continue to work on challenging that brake zone and trying to get off the peak pressure, rolling more entry speed, and really trail braking later in the corner. And this is why I see this. Let's go and pause it at the initial throttle spot. So right here, you get to initial throttle. And what I want to do is kind of draw what the data would look like here of your throttle spot and talk about what's going on. So if this is your, sorry, the lines aren't perfectly straight, but if this is your kind of telemetry of your throttle position, if you're not that familiar with data, don't worry, I'll explain it all. Down here, this bottom line would be 0% throttle. At the top here would be 100% throttle. So the data for what your kind of driving here would be is kind of a blip of the throttle here, and then you try to get back to throttle, and it kind of looks something like this, and you get back to full throttle up at the top here. Let me just move my face out of the way. Ideally, what I'd like to see here is probably something that looks like this. So you can see the major differences are There's no initial blip of the throttle here. We actually get to the real initial throttle that we'll call, this point for you later, but then we're able to get to full throttle much, much, much earlier, and that's actually going to pay off much bigger dividends here. So there's two things here. One is you never want to have to get to that throttle and get off of it. And we really want to be nice and progressive to throttle, and as we get to throttle, we want to be able to open our hands. If you're getting the throttle and you're not able to open your hands, you're having to keep turning like this in 90% of corners, and this is a perfect example of that, you're getting to throttle too early. You're scrubbing speed, you're binding the car up, and you're creating understeer. So ideally here, we are rolling more entry speed in here, trail braking the car down, allowing the car to rotate because we're having weight on that front nose for longer, keeping that front grip. The rear will rotate, and that's what's going to allow us to get to full throttle that much earlier, and that's going to really pay off all the way down to the fast right-hander through all of these S's that come up here. So this initial throttle, this position right here, where we pause the video, is this initial throttle right there. And what's happening is you abruptly take some weight off the front nose. It's just like a boom, take weight off the front nose, and then the weight's, it's not on the front nose, it's not on the rear, it's kind of in the middle of nowhere of the car, so neither end has as much grip as we want it to have. So really work on that discipline to only get to throttle to when we can open our hands. And when you can do that, your brain will naturally allow you to start rolling in more entry speed, because that's the only other way to make this happen. So similar concept, and I don't want to overload kind of all of the concepts here, but this is all one core idea. So if the data works well for you, I'm going to draw kind of what I'd like to see the throttle the brake application and what I'd like to see there. So same thing, this now braking. This is 0% brakes at the bottom, 100% at the top here. Your graph to me would look something like this into this corner. Around here, what I'd much rather see is same, you have a great initial brake, but then get off of that peak pressure and then hold the lighter pressure for longer. And that's what the trail braking is. So you're going to be on entry, you're going to be rolling more speed because we're lighter on those brakes by a lot, but then we're braking longer into the corner. And that little bit of trail brake there is what's going to help rotate the car probably roughly about here on the track and allow you to get that full throttle way earlier. So it's a mix of, once we get the discipline of where we want to get to throttle, then we work on lightening up the brakes, holding them for longer into the corner at less pressure. It's almost like just a toe on the brakes, and it's more about keeping the weight on the front nose rather than slowing down the car. So hopefully this concept makes sense. It's just delay that initial throttle to where you can open your hands as you go to throttle. The rest will kind of take care of itself, but I'd like to explain it in a way that hopefully makes sense for you. So frame by frame, going later, trail braking, trail braking, trail braking. Right here, the car is rotating, and I'm waiting. Right here, you can see we're starting to open our hands. Now is when I'm feeding in initial throttle, probably full throttle by now, and look at that. Beautiful, nice rotation, and you get out of this corner, get a great run. Oops, let me turn the volume back down. Great run onto this kind of back straightaway, third straightaway through the S's here. Through the S's, line's great. I think you look awesome through here. Nice entry speed. Your eyes look up. You're hitting all the apexes. Fantastic job through there. All righty, so let's take a listen to the right-hander. Turn the volume back up. Right-hander, I think you look really good through it. I would say you're maybe, again, slightly early on throttle. I know it's a high-speed corner, so there you want a little bit of throttle to help with the rear confidence of the corner. Ideally, it's just a little bit more entry speed, but I think you look good there. Now I want to keep the volume up. Let's watch this final corner. One time full speed, and we'll go back through it again. So this has, we're doing the exact same thing here as the previous hairpin corner. So I'm going to pause it where I hear that initial throttle. So Similar concept here. You flip the throttle trying to get to it. You get that understeer, so you have to lift to get the front end to help turn back again. And then you actually see here, because of that, we get a decent little rear loss of rear grip right here where we're having to catch the car. So just like the previous hairpin, I'd like to see us find the discipline to only get to throttle. And typically for me, it's this actual tire stack here. So let me just go back so we can take a look at it. I'm waiting, wait. Right here, I'd like to pick up the initial throttle because then I can start to open my hands. And that'll help with two things. You won't get this oversteer moment, and you're getting that because we're shifting the weight around too much. And you go from kind of nice grip, and then you go to throttle understeer. You then have to go back to the brakes or lift, and then when you shift the weight back to the front, then we lose the rear of the car. So really delay, be disciplined. Delay that initial throttle until this point, and then work on that lightening up of the brakes earlier and carrying the brakes deeper into the corner. Ideally, it's as you go to throttle, open those hands. That's the main concept here on most of these corners. It's really the turn 2, turn 3, the hairpin, and here that we really want to work on delaying that initial throttle. It'll allow you to roll more entry speed, get to full throttle earlier. It'll make a pretty big difference in the balance of the car and just lap time. It makes a big, big difference. Once you get throttle at the exit, once the car settles down, you get a nice exit, nice line everywhere. You're driving at a really high level. So this is the main concept that I want to focus on. Hopefully this all makes sense. More than happy to hop on a call with you and kind of talk about things a little bit further, explain it a little bit more deeply. But main thing, be disciplined about being able to get to throttle as you open your hands, and that'll allow you to start rolling more entry speed. That's the main thing we got to work on, and hopefully we'll see you at the track soon.